You've came into contact with percent of change probably more than you realize. You may have seen stickers on products that say 20% more free, or you've noticed stock prices going across your smartphone or across the screen of your computer showing a 3.43% decrease in Apple stock. This was actually on my computer this morning. Percent of change is found by first establishing a ratio, and this ratio is comparing the amount of change to the original amount. You take that ratio and then you turn that into a percent, which you have seen in previous lessons. A ratio, you're dividing those two. You divide the top by the bottom, you get a decimal, and then you turn that decimal into a percent by moving the decimal over 2 spots. An example would be if you go to Walmart and you're going to buy the same bottle of Pantene shampoo that you always buy. You normally buy the 20-ounce bottle, but they're running a special. They have a 25-ounce bottle, and at the top of it, it says 25% more free. Here's where they got that percentage. You take the amount of change. You could have done that in your head, but this is just the math behind it. The difference between the 25-ounce and the 20-ounce is 5. And you're comparing that to the original amount. The regular bottle is a 20-ounce bottle, so you put 5 over 20. You may already figured out that that's 1/4 because you've reduced that fraction, or that didn't come to mind in your calculator. You would divide the top by the bottom. 5 divided by 20, you get 0.25. And then, like we done in the previous lesson, you move the decimal over 2 spaces, and you see that that is a 25% increase. Sometimes the question will say find the percent of increase or find the percent of decrease, or other times it might say find the percent of change. And if they don't tell you if it's an increase or a decrease, you can label it an increase or a decrease, or even sometimes you'll see with a decrease it'll show a negative, and you'll see this with stocks. It'll say negative 3% on Johnson & Johnson stock or whatever it is. So here are some examples. 28 decreased to 20. You're first going to find the amount of change. The difference between 28 and 20 is 8. Over the original amount. We started with 28. I have my ratio and I need to turn it into a percent. So I'm going to first turn it to a decimal by dividing the top by the bottom. 8 divided by 28 is a big long decimal. 0.28571 and then it goes on and on and on. So let's round to the nearest tenth. And that's going to be after we turn it into a percent. So we're going to move the decimal over 2 spots. 1, 2. So it's 28.5714 and so forth percent. We'll round it to the nearest tenth. So that is 28.6%. And that was a decrease. They've already declared it's a decrease, so I just need the percentage. Then there's 32 increased to 68. So I need the change between those two. When you subtract 68 and 32, you get 36. Over the original amount, which was 32, if you'll notice your top number is bigger, so you're going to end up with something greater than 1. 36 divided by 32 is 1.125. And then I'm going to move my decimal over 2 spots. And I have 112.5%. So I want you to think about that. When we're saying it's 112.5% increase, that's larger than 100. It means that it more than doubled. If it had went from 32 to 64, it would have been a 100% increase because the change would have been 32 over the original 32, which is the whole number 1, 100%. So it has more than doubled, meaning that the percentage is greater than a 100% increase. Here's a way that you can use percent of change. You have a jeweler and he buys a ring from an artisan, which is the person that makes the ring, for $85. He sells the ring in his store at a 135% increase in price. What is the retail price? So in this case, we've been given the percent, but what we have not been given is the change. We haven't been given the new price either. So we're going to take that base formula that we had. Make myself some room here. We know that percent of change is equal to the amount of change over the original. So what we can do is we can plug in what we know and then solve for what we don't know. So we know $85. $85 is the originals. It can go on bottom. And then we've been given 135%. And anytime you're putting a percent into an equation, you're going to put it into a decimal. So move the decimal back over. And so 1.35 equals what we don't know. We're going to put that as x, the amount of change over 85. So now it's an equation that we're going to solve. We're going to undo what's happening to the variable. It's being divided by 85, so we are going to multiply both sides by 85. Get our calculator here. 85 times 1.35 is 114.75, and that's going to equal x. Those cancel there. So x is not the retail price, it's the amount of change. So that's going to be the difference between the retail and the $85. So what this shows is that was the increase in it. So I can add 114.75 to the wholesale price. I can get, I'm going to move this up here so you can see it better, that he's selling it for $199.75. That's the retail price. That's how much he's going to sell it for in his store. Here's some practice problems for you. 880 increased to 1760, so I want you to find the percent of change. On B, 28 increased by 150%. I've given you the percent of change. I want you to find the new amount. And then C, we have a water tank example where you're going to find the capacity of the new tank. Okay, on part A, $8.80 increased to $17.60. I found the amount of change. I subtracted the two amounts. The change was 8.8, which is the same as the original. When you divide those, you get ones. This is like what I was talking about. It's a 100% increase. The amount doubled. On B, 28 increased by 150%. You plug in what you know and then solve for what you don't know. 150% is a decimal, is 1.5. It equals the amount of change, which we don't know, x, over the original 28. Solve that equation by multiplying both sides by 28. So x equals 42. That's the amount of change. It's not the new amount. So I take the amount of change, 42, I add that to 28, and I get that the new amount is 70. For part C, the water tank can hold 45 gallons. A new tank can hold 25% more. What's the capacity of the new tank? So the amount of change is what we don't know, x, over the original 45. That's equal to the percent as a decimal. I solve for x, so multiplying both sides by 45. I get that the amount of change, x, is equal to 11.25. That's the amount of change, not the new capacity. So I add that to the original water tank's capacity. So the new tank will hold 56.25 gallons.